Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Restored to More podcast. We are so excited for our guest today, Troy. We got to hang out with him and have the privilege of actually grabbing dinner and just having fellowship a couple weeks ago at Georgia. And we're like, we need to have you on the podcast and we need to glean from all of your awesomeness. And yeah, we were just super inspired by who you are, your love for Jesus, your love for recovery, and your love for health and wellness too, because you've lost 1 million pounds. So awesome.
Great.
Congratulations to
Yeah.
you.
So I'm going to tell you a little about Troy. This is awesome. Troy has a ton of letters after his name that I'm not even going to try to go through because you can just read about it in the bio. But he is one of the founding members of an organization now known as CSASI. He has served on the board since its inception and is on the executive of for 4 years, helping guide and direct the development of the organization as well as overseeing the clinical track trainees. As a counselor, Troy has been in the sex addiction field for over 25 years. He works for Restoration Counseling in Atlanta, Georgia, where he employs a holistic approach involving the spouse, family members, and friends in the SA recovery process. Troy is a clinical counseling supervisor and a CSASI supervisor for clinicians, coaches, and pastoral and lay leaders. In addition to speaking to schools and churches, Troy also teaches on the topic of sex addiction through Liberty University's online program. He also works as an adjunct professor at the Houston Baptist University. Troy, what haven't you done, my man? My God.
I've done quite a few things.
After that,
Too busy, but that's good.
what I
Well
appreciate,
done.
yeah, what I appreciate about Troy the most is definitely your professional approach and then your heart for Jesus. And I think you
Mm,
pair those two so well together, Troy. And so I just want to thank you for doing that. We have a lot we want to talk about, but
Yeah.
before we get into all of the questions, I guess we're just
yes.
curious. You're passionate about this field. You've been in it for a long
Yes.
time. What got you into this field in the first place, and what keeps you passionate about this field?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So I will use the story. I was talking to Sherry Keffer or Sherry Denman a couple years and years ago, and she was like asking me about my story. And my story is I'm a unicorn. I don't have a recovery story. Although we're all in recovery from our sin and destruction,
Sure.
but I don't have any sordid past. I'm a guy, I've seen pornography, I see the pull of it, but I don't have any significant history. But when I got into counseling, I thought, man, I want to work with marriages and adolescents. And as I got into it, about 3 to 4 years into it, I started getting sex addiction.
Yeah.
And it started making sense to me. And I
Mm.
was like, what is this about? And so I really believe that the Lord called me to walk alongside this issue. And so I understand it for some reason. And I'm hoping to give hope to these guys and give them all that they need to walk in freedom every day. And so what keeps me passionate about it is just the fact that I'm seeing these guys get in recovery. I'm seeing marriages get repaired. I'm seeing recovery and healing taking place and spiritual renewal in these guys' lives. And then honestly, I love the community that is around this issue and getting to hang out with people and getting to know people in this world. They are probably the most genuine people I've met in my life.
Oh,
And I love that piece. So
I
I'm
love
going to
that.
keep doing it until he's done.
That's so good. And there's no doubt that this is becoming one of the most prevalent issues that is tearing
Mm,
up the church, that's tearing up young men, that's tearing up families. I've heard
yes.
some different therapists have said, "Oh, it's growing to become the number one addiction worldwide," and different things. It's just so prevalent. It's crazy,
Yeah.
and what you're seeing.
Yes.
So I'm sure the work that you've even started, you had no idea how big it was when
Yes.
you first started, right? Which is
And
incredible.
yeah, and years ago we went through this pandemic called COVID, but this pandemic has been going on for a long time.
Mm,
Mm.
mm, yeah, so true.
So good. Well, what is CSASI for those that
Ah,
are like, what did you just say? Like Caesar, what is
yeah,
that?
let me put that out there for you. It's an acronym called Christian Sex Addiction Specialists International. We are a nonprofit board we were conceived about 20 something years ago with the purpose of training clinicians and coaches to be aware of trauma and the impact on that. 20 years ago, 25 years ago, that was not a common theme. Now it's all over the place. So now what CSASI does is continues that training And we help train counselors, coaches, and pastors how to be aware of sex addiction and betrayal trauma and how to walk alongside people with that, giving them the basic tools that they need to do that process. We also host a summit or a conference every year where we gather with like-minded believers to encourage and inspire one another. And then we partner with other organizations that are rowing in the boat in the same direction. And that's what we do at CSASI
That's
in a
awesome.
nutshell.
I love that.
I want to ask as a follow-up question to that, but we get some people who will be like, well, I'm seeing a therapist or I'm seeing a counselor, but they're not like specifically,
Trained in
Yeah.
that area.
Yeah. From your perspective, I'd love to know like
Yeah.
why
What was
is it so
missing?
important for someone to get solid training to come alongside couples
Yeah.
to be specialized in this?
Yeah, I think from the clinical world, we talk about standard of care. And so if you're going to work with something, OCD, you're going to work with depression, you're going to work with sex addiction or alcoholism, if you're going to move in that direction, then you want to become an expert in that area. And one of the ways you become an expert is that you immerse yourself in training to understand all the different facets around it. Sex addiction, as we were saying earlier, it's a pandemic, it's out there. I mean, if you're a counselor and you just hang out a shingle that you do counseling, you're going to get porn addicts, you're going to get betrayed spouses just because it's such a big thing. And what we wanted to do is we wanted to say, okay, if you want to do that work, let's get some training. Let's make sure you don't do any harm. Let's make sure you get what you need to do to know what you're doing with this particular population. So I would say that anybody who wants to get help in this area should look for some element of certification that clinician has gotten some training or experience under their belt to really work with it. And then I would also make this big plea is that if you're going to do this work, know you're called to do it because it's hard work. It's
Yeah.
deep work. And so you got to
So
have
it
that calling to do it.
sounds like, Troy, you guys have brought in a few different elements that maybe was missing in previous certifications or even just understanding of the culture. Like there's the CSAT that I think everyone was kind of familiar with in the beginning. And I think
Great.
then you guys added more to it. You wanted a Christian emphasis to it. You wanted more of the trauma emphasis to it. So what does CSASI offer that would be different than maybe just somebody who only has a CSAT, or help me understand if I'm even understanding that wrong. Like,
yeah. Well,
in addition to those,
I totally respect CSATs and the work that they do. They get some amazing training around that. What we do is I think we do bring forth that distinctly Christian approach to help integrate your faith into that trauma model approach and helping our clients see and work with that. We teach our clinicians and coaches and pastors how to integrate that into the work that they do. I think that's what distinctly stands us out. But we co-labor and come right alongside all of our CSATs and the work that they're doing. So
I love that. That's awesome.
yeah.
Well, let's talk about a couple of things that our listeners like. That's great. Okay, I'm still help here. But there are a lot of people that are probably hearing this are going, hey, I'd like to know more about how to help the people around me, whether they're a lay leader at church or whether they're a coach or whether they're a therapist. I think it's great. We're going to talk a little bit more about how to learn about CSASI as we go on this episode. I think the first thing that I heard you talk about in one of your videos was the term sex addiction and how, you guys have a different definition than the traditional definition of sex addiction. And you kind of talk about why that definition might not be a full, complete picture because sometimes it's only focused on the behavior. And so my question would be, how does the term sex addiction differ from your definition of it? And then what's missing? Why might it not be complete?
So you're asking me, let me make sure I get this correct. You're asking me what my definition of that is, or what have I seen on the traditional definition that may be missing?
Thanks for clarifying. Yeah, you guys said there's a definition that CSASI comes up with for sex addiction. And you talked about how it kind of relates to the core versus a lot of addiction. We focus so much on the behavior, but we kind of miss the emphasis on what's beneath it or the effects of it and things like that.
Yeah. That's so true. So, I mean, if you look from a faith standpoint, right, out of the heart springs these things, right? And the nature of man outside of Christ is fallen, and inside of Christ, we're redeemed, but we still have the remnants of sin. And it's not just a behavioral thing, it's out of our hearts. And so what I tend to say to my clients, I'm like, hey, when you come in and you have a sex addiction, I don't have to look at you as a believer and say, do you know that that's wrong? And we need to stop that behavior. They're like, oh, yeah, I know that. I'm
Mm.
like, do you want to know why you do that? Do you want to know what's under the hood? Do you want to know what's in the heart to help you figure out how to stop that? Because we can put band-aids on, we can put things in place to help you not do this anymore, but it will never give you the freedom you're looking for. God is interested in redeeming you and restoring you, to making you anew. So he's going to give you a new heart. That doesn't mean you still won't have some temptation or struggle, but he's renewing your heart. And so underneath, if we say from a trauma standpoint or from a spiritual standpoint, oftentimes, I love the quote that G.K. Chesterton said, every man who enters a brothel is looking for God.
Mm. Wow.
And so, what are you looking for? Am I looking for acceptance, approval, affirmation? What am I looking for that God and God's means will give you? Stop looking in that sewer. Stop looking in that unhealthy place. Because once you grab a hold of the unhealthy place, it will keep pulling you back in. That's the whole idea of addiction, right? The repeated cycle over and over and over again. So we want to help, in my case, I want to help my guys understand what the core issue is, what the heart issue is, what are they really longing for in their life that God wants to give them. He doesn't want to give them porn. He
Mm.
wants to give them freedom.
What do you think it is, Troy, that keeps pulling them back? I mean, you talk about different facets of
Yeah.
neurological, there's the physical. You even talked about how there's like, it's the only sin against ourselves.
Our own body. Yep.
Can you hit,
We get addicted to ourselves.
yeah, what is that? Tell me that. Well, let's start there. What do you mean addicted to ourselves? Like, what does that even mean?
Yes. So I'm not that much of an expert when it comes to neuroscience, but the dopamine levels that get hit when we look at pornography or do those kind of things, our body wants that and wants more and more of it. And that's what we get addicted to. So we keep going back and we build a tolerance and we want more and more, and we have to have more in order to give us that same hit. You marry that with the shame component, that I'm keeping this hidden and I'm not talking about it. You keep that there. That's like a recipe or a cocktail for, major problems overall. So what we need to understand is when we're treating it, we need to look at the body, the mind, and the spirit. We need to look at the body and how to renew it and how to retrain and go through those withdrawals. But we also need to know spiritually, how do we figure out what our hearts are longing for and stop going to the pornography or the sexual acting out to satisfy that. There's a whole lot there that we can talk about, but
Yeah.
I think you just have to look at the holistic person, body, mind, and spirit. And there's all kinds of things that we need to address there with them.
I love that. I think it's so interesting to look at that because yes, there are all these chemicals that are going off in our
Yeah.
brain with pornography, masturbation. But what you're saying is not only does that make it highly addictive, but
Mm.
pairing it with the shame component,
Yeah.
that is almost like you put both those pieces together. And it's like, wow, that's a match for somebody to hide, to stay in it, to keep using it over and over again. The other thing that you
And
talk about is the emotional maturity. And you had one
mm,
story of a person who was raised in kind of a legalistic household that never learned how to even
mm,
understand what they were feeling. And I heard that. I was like, oh, that's so me. Like it
yeah.
wasn't just the addiction, it's that the addiction was the best way to cope with the lack of ability to mature, the pain in my life that I had. Can you
Mm.
talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. Yeah. One thing I use these little kind of phrases or things that I help with my guys. I use this term around emotions. We need to be good stewards of our emotions.
Mm.
And the way you do that is you're aware of them, you identify them, and then you process them, right? So I need to be aware. What am I feeling right now? I'm feeling something. Oftentimes it's negative or positive. Then I start to identify it. This is where I begin to build my emotional vocabulary. A lot of my guys don't have emotional vocabulary, so we have to get the feelings wheels and things like that to help them start to identify. And then once they identify, help them to communicate that or process that. Let them lay that before the Lord. Let them share that with their brothers and sisters. Let them begin to process that out. Then they start to realize, oh, porn isn't never going to fix loneliness.
Mm.
Porn's never going to fix anger. Porn's never going to fix feeling anxious.
Mm.
There is a way to fix that. But if before all that, if you're just like living blindly and not really owning that and talking about your emotions, you're going to go off the escape route. So I encourage what
Wow.
we call emotional stewardship, stewarding your emotions.
I think that's so crazy because when you said that, I just pictured my whole life. So I started struggling with pornography around like 10 years old. And I would go to church. I would even like confess this in junior high and high school in small groups. But the emphasis was always about
Mm.
confession and then
Yep.
forgiveness. It was
Yep.
never about maturity or understanding why. I mean, I just wish a small group leader was like, Clint, I'm so glad you confessed that. What do you think you were feeling before you ran to pornography? I mean, that would have
Yeah.
been a game changer. I would be like, oh, I don't know. Like, it was so great that he approached it with forgiveness. Like, hey, there's therefore now no condemnation for those who are in Christ
Yes.
Jesus. And if we confess our sins, God is faithful to forgive us. And I always felt forgiven, but
Yeah.
I never experienced maturity. I never experienced
You,
awareness until
right.
years.
You never really explored why this was going on, right? We
Yeah.
all know the right answers. That's why I say to my guys, like, do I have to
Yeah.
tell you that porn is wrong? No,
Wow.
no. But we have to explore why we do what we do. And I think that's really the crux of what good treatment
Mm,
is for people. Yeah. I mean, even the story of the Garden of Eden where God came in and spoke to Adam and Eve, right?
mm,
He didn't have to ask them any questions. He already knew what went on. But
mm.
he was so gracious to ask them, hey, let's have a conversation about this. Tell me what went on. And he knew they were going to say stupid things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But he's telling us you need to talk about this. You need to flesh this out. You need to bring it out in the open. So instead of keeping it inside, that's just one example in the scriptures
So
that
good. I wonder what
hopefully
Adam and
is
Eve's fight looked like after that. Were they leaving the garden like, you did that? Just threw me under the bus like
Probably
that? And he's like,
I would.
you were right next. I mean, just man, that would have been ugly.
Lots of pointing fingers. Um,
Yep.
I think something that we have found is very much so helping them understand like aware, identify, and process. But
Mm.
they have, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, Clint, but something that you have shared with me is like these guys just don't know how to process emotions in a healthy
Or
way.
Yep.
like regulate.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like what are some things that you recommend
that's good.
to some of
Yeah.
the guys you're coaching to process emotions in a healthy way? Because I just don't think
Yeah.
Yeah, they're
it's
getting better at naming it, but like now
yes.
it's like great.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm stressed, I'm overwhelmed, I'm anxious, I'm fearful.
Yeah.
What do I do with
Right.
that?
Yeah.
So you can't regulate what you don't know. So you have to identify,
Okay.
right? Then you have to regulate by using certain skills, right? I think the first thing that I say to my guys is that your body is responding to this. Something's being threatened, something's caused inside of you internally, and your body is responding. So what I say is let's learn how to arrest the body. Let's honestly sit down.
Mm.
Let's take a deep breath. Let's take a walk. Let's identify that we're feeling something and then let's go do something that starts to just regulate that body down for yourself. There's all kinds of grounding skills that you can use to do that, right? So you arrest the body. This one of the other things you do, and these are not any sequential order, although I think arresting the body first helps you sort of settle. But then since this is an issue in our soul, it's okay for us to cry out to God and say, why are you downcast? I'm struggling with these emotions, God. I don't understand them. Help me to understand them. So now I'm going to the Father and I'm pleading with him about help me to understand this. I'm engaging my cognition and I'm engaging my heart in that same situation. And then talking to others. God tells us very clearly, bear your burdens one to another. Guys, that's a command, not an option.
Oh, that's good. That's good, Troy. Preach it.
So bear your burdens one to another. And when I share with you, Clint, if I share with you that I'm really stressed about, the dentist appointment I have later today, right? Me saying that out loud to you, I hear it in my own ears and I go, oh, yeah, I am. I don't really have to be too stressed about that. I'm bearing that out to you. You don't have to fix me, but
Wow.
just you hearing it and me hearing it is really helpful. So being able to bear that out to others, that's why God created us in a body of Christ. We need one another. And so that's ways but remember what shame does. Shame makes you want to run and hide quickly. Shame makes you don't want to tell anybody else. And shame makes you run away from God.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
how are you going to process? How are you going to regulate? How are you going to get yourself in a better order? So that I think is where we begin to train our guys in those areas to try to regulate themselves. There's a bunch of skills out there that people can pick up on.
That's so good. And what that does, it reminds me like that's true masculinity, right? Like I think in
Yeah.
our culture, we think that masculinity is men handling it by themselves, pulling up your bootstraps and just keep going. Just don't talk about your feelings. And I just think, man, what if we were taught that as men? Like, hey guys, it actually takes way more courage to name
Yeah.
your feelings, to share your
Yeah.
feelings, and to regulate
Yeah.
your feelings, that you are more like a hero and a conqueror when you
Yeah.
do what is terrifying. And what is terrifying
Ah,
typically makes you feel vulnerable. But what you'll find
yeah.
is that God's community of people will pray for you, they'll uplift you. And I'm like, oh, you would actually experience freedom and maturity versus like we
Yeah.
know that once sexual addiction takes place and we continue to run to it, we minimize the maturity that that man experiences, especially emotional
Yeah.
maturity over time.
And there's so many beautiful pictures in the scriptures, but one particularly stands out. It's the story when Jesus is resurrected and he's in this room with a lot of the disciples, and then they're all rejoicing that he's here, right? And then Thomas walks in and is like, I'm not sure. And Jesus doesn't turn and say, Hey, Yahoo,
Mm,
these other guys believe me. What's wrong with you? What does Jesus do? He embraces his doubt and says, Come touch. I'm here. I understand where you are. I need you to be comforted and believe in me. That's what he does. That's what our God does. That's what we ought to do to our brothers and sisters in Christ. And we ought to be encouraged that that's what Jesus wants us to do. He wants us to say, I'm struggling. I doubt. Okay. And
mm.
we need to embrace them that way.
It's good.
Troy, I love your heart. I think there's the thing here that I hear is that Jesus is so full of grace.
Mm,
He's so full of grace and mercy. And I think one of the things that prevented me from experiencing healing for so many years was that I was so afraid of being known. I just really believe
yeah.
if people really knew how much I was struggling with pornography or the types of stuff I was looking at or what I was fantasizing about,
Yeah.
if people really knew that, they'd have no respect for me. They would disown me. I wouldn't be involved in the leadership roles that I wanted to be involved in. And I hear you saying that I get
Mm,
those fears, like those fears are valid,
yeah. Those fears
those
are
fears are
legitimate.
real.
Yeah.
And Jesus doesn't disown us. He already knows it. And he's going to show up with that mercy and grace, give us the strength and guide us to the right people that are safe. I know you had some questions about that. Like,
Yeah. And
understand the safe
who are
people.
we to think that we won't experience rejection? The
Mm,
thought of somebody might reject me for what I've done, the answer is yes.
mm,
Some will. Jesus never will.
mm, mm.
So
So we
good.
don't have to live in this place where we're like, I have to get clean enough so I'm never rejected. No.
Mm.
You will be rejected by some people, and that's okay. They didn't die for me.
So
Amen.
good. I want to know from, let's just say we're on this like process with this guy, right? Okay. And he now knows what he's feeling. He's gone for a walk and now he needs to process it with someone. Well,
Yeah.
we have come across people where they're like, well, I've never shared my story. Nobody knows. What would you recommend to somebody
Yeah.
who's in that spot?
So I'm a big advocate of having community, group particularly. And so this is what I say in my guys. I'm like, most of my guys come in with no close friends or people they don't get close to anybody. So I've come up with these two terms. There's what I call the inorganic group. That would be things like a Pure Desire group or a Be Broken group or a Samson group or whatever group's local to you. That's an inorganic group. And I want my guys to go there to start to learn how to utilize the
Mm.
group and the community concept. But
Good.
I don't want them just to stay there. I want them to move towards organic groups where they begin to create that in their own community in some regards. They can keep both, but that I think is the pivot that they need to make at some point in their life. So I encourage inorganic groups and then go to organic. That's the way I tend to look at it. And I go, you have to be in group. You have to be in community. This will not happen. I've had multiple guys come to me and say, I just want to see you and get this fixed. I'm like, I'm no God and I'm no magician. You got to have other resources. We know that from a statistic standpoint. You need people.
That is
So
so
is
good.
that answer?
That's so
Yes.
good.
Why do you believe in community so much? Like,
Mm.
why is it so important
Oh,
for somebody to learn organic community?
Yeah, well, God created it. He created us as members of a body. And
Mm,
he communicates a lot about having one another. You cannot do this. We're not created as independent. So I think our createdness and what God set up is the right way to do things. So I can't buck against what God created.
mm,
Um, and then remember with the fall, we tend to believe opposite of what God says.
mm,
You know, it was, what did he say to what did he say when Adam? It is not good for man to be alone. He created community for him. But then after the fall, there's enmity between us. We tend to want to isolate and get on our own. But God, Jesus came in and says, I'm redeeming it. I've come to fulfill the law and I'm coming to redeem it and make it right. And so that's where he created, or not created, he instituted the church. And we need that. So that's why we need community. And if you want to just look from a pragmatic standpoint, if you just kind of, if you worked with guys long enough, those guys who are in community are so much happier and better.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think this is so true, and I'm so grateful you're sharing it the way you are, because this is kind of what happened. I didn't have a name for it. I didn't have a terminology for it, which I'm like, Choice giving me terminologies here,
We
just
just
term
called it proactive
accountability or
accountability.
something like. Yeah, you're right. That's what we did, and I think what happened was there were guys I met along the recovery journey from different recovery circles, from different groups, even just people I knew had the same story, and we ended up forming this like Thursday morning group, right? And we just met
Yeah.
every week for a couple hours. And it was so special, Troy, because it wasn't
Mm.
about a Bible study. It wasn't about reading a book and doing all that. We did those things. We read the Bible at times and we shared things we were learning. We read books at times and shared what we were learning, but it wasn't focused on that. It was focused on just being real. And so we'd show
Yeah.
up and we'd talk about different areas of our life, whether it was anything that was really making us susceptible to going back into those addictions, whether it was
Yeah.
finances or family, or it was our fitness and our health or various
Yeah.
things. And we just got real. And it was so crazy. Between three guys, it was hardly ever under
Oh,
2 hours. I mean, three guys just, and you'd be like, wow, like where does that exist? But it was what you're saying, this
it
organic
doesn't.
community
Yeah.
of fellowship, of just these
Yeah.
guys being like, we're just going to show up and talk about our lives. And I just think you're right. These were guys that had hope. They had joy in their life. It didn't feel like recovery was this bearing, the thing that was bearing over us with guilt and shame. It
Yeah.
just felt like this is where I go to be real. I'm
Yeah,
just
you
going to show up
always talked about your feelings. You
always. Yeah.
Yes.
pull up
Yes.
feelings check.
Yeah. It's
And the other piece about this is that sometimes we think about some of the scriptures around sexual immorality, like flee sexual immorality, gouge your eyeballs out, put it
yeah.
to death, right? And
Yeah.
we go, yeah, we want to do that. But what about the command of not forsaking the assembly and bearing your burdens one to another? But those are
Wow.
so
Wow.
pivotally involved in this process. And so if the enemy can get you to run away from sexuality, but also keep you out of community, he's got you.
Yeah.
Wow. That's so good.
Yeah.
That's so good. And it's so true. We're so quick to do the other things, but to
Yeah.
voice our burdens is even hard in our culture, right?
Yes,
Just
it
want to be
is.
self-sustaining and
Mm.
able and all that stuff, and this is not how God designed it. So yet again,
Nope.
we're going against the way He designed it, which is why we create that, even that own hardship for sure.
Yep.
I want to talk
Yeah.
about something, Troy. Take it to a different area here.
Go
I
ahead.
love the wording that you used. I think when I first was in therapy, and my therapist goes, "Hey, Clint, what trauma do you have?" I was like, "I don't have any trauma. Like, I'm fine. I don't have any trauma." You know what I mean? Like, and I just think this is the reaction of so many men I talk to, even their wives, are like, "Well, I don't know why he has an addiction, because he wasn't ever molested. He wasn't have this." And I think what I love what you said, we have these, what did you call them? I'm going to look at my notes here. But there were these core wounds. And I thought, wow,
Yeah. Core
core
wounds. Yeah.
wounds is such a more just palatable way to say it. Like, oh, we all have wounds that we experienced as
Hmm.
a kid or things. And a lot of times we're still going back
Seems
to our
less
addiction.
intense.
What's that?
It seems less
It
intense.
does. Like we
It
all get a
does. Yeah.
wound. Like we
Yeah.
all fell out of a tree or fell off our skateboard and we got hurt somewhere, and we still bear the scar of that. I have a scar on my elbow from falling down a little cliff and getting rocks in it. And I just wonder
Yeah.
who else is carrying core wounds, things that
Yeah.
happened to us.
Well, that was really birthed out of, I mean, Patrick Carnes wrote that in the sex addiction model. He has wounds at the top. Mark Laser, who wrote Healing the Wounds of Sexual Addiction, that's all in there. That
Yeah.
woundedness is like, let's get down to the tenderness of your heart.
Mm.
What are those tender spots that you're trying to cover, you're trying to cope with, you're trying to heal through these unrealistic, unhealthy means? And so, and then where do those wounds get established, right, in your life? Some would say they came from trauma, and they did. I also use the word training, what the scripture says, train up a child in the way they will go. I have 3 children and they're trainable,
Mm.
and I need to train them well, but I'll probably train them wrongly at times. And
Wow.
so what we need to do is look at how I was trained wrongly.
Mm.
Here's an example.
Wow.
If I grew up in a household where we didn't talk about emotions, that's called neglect of emotional training. And how does that then show up in a 25-year-old? How does that show up in a 35-year-old? And so we need to teach him, we need to retrain him how to process his emotions.
Wow.
And this is not blaming mom and dad, it's just reality,
Yeah. Oh yeah. We're
right?
all
So
going to fall
that's,
short as parents for sure. Yeah.
oh yeah, welcome to the club.
Yeah. Wow. Neglect of emotional training. And
Yeah.
as we're in this space of sexual brokenness, we're always like, hey, who was raised in homes that didn't talk about sex? And like 90% of the hands go up, right? Our parents know how to talk about it. But I would love to see a group of 1,000 people and someone says, hey, who had neglect of emotional training? You'd
Yes.
probably have to explain what that meant for a minute. They'd be like, I don't know. Should I raise my hand? But then you explain it like that. And I almost think most hands would go up. How many of us
Yeah.
were raised with a feelings chart on our fridge? Or how many of us were raised with the ability to journal and our parents saying, oh, I feel these things right now at the dinner table. What do you feel? And I just think,
And who
wow.
was even asked? Who
Yeah.
was even asked the question? How do you feel? I need to validate you feel. They still may be wrong, but I need to validate you feel that
Yeah.
way, you know?
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, that's a whole, yeah, I think that's a big area of trauma or training that the neglect piece of that. We always think there's this chart I use in my with my clients. There's invasive training, there's invasive trauma and neglect trauma.
Yeah.
And so invasive physical abuse would be hitting, punching, kicking. Neglect physical abuse would be withholding hugs, not touching, pulling away, neglecting food, right? So you have to look that trauma shows up in all those categories. And there's several categories: physical, emotional, mental, sexual, spiritual, and cultural. Those
Yeah.
are all the headings.
Wow.
Um, yeah, sorry, I
Wow.
kind of took you to a bigger place there.
No, that was great. I guess my question would be, Troy, I think one of the best ways is working through those
Mm,
wounds with somebody who's walking you
yes.
through it. But a lot of people are on a wait list for a counselor or a therapist, or maybe they're going to an intensive, but it's 3 months away.
Yeah.
What can they do in that interim?
Yeah.
What would you say are some, even just, I know there's a lot you could recommend, but even just for this one area of, okay, maybe there are some wounds I've never even addressed or understood, identified. What would you point them towards?
Well, I created a 4-week course online. I'm not trying to just promote my stuff, but I
No,
used
do it.
Do it.
Jay's book, right? The Unwanted book. It really has a way of kind of weaving that in and addressing that. So I would encourage anybody just to get the book, grab a pencil, scratch through it, write some things in there, keep some notes, and just take it as a way of looking at it as a mirror and say, God, show me what you want to show me,
Yeah.
right? Through this process. So now I'm taking an active role to kind of explore. You don't have to have all the answers, but you have to be willing to explore. And that was what I would encourage them to do. And then being able to find that group, that inorganic group, or find that counselor that could help you kind of walk through that. But there's tons of guys like, look, I could tell you if someone showed up to your Thursday morning group, if you were meeting in a physical place, you would not turn them away. And so I would encourage guys, go find a group, get involved in something and start talking about that.
I love that. I love what you said. You have to be willing to explore. Just show
Explore.
up
Yeah.
open.
Good.
Mm-hmm.
But most guys want to fix.
So true.
I can't tell you how many guys come in and be like, hey, I want to see you for about 3 to 5 sessions and fix this, 14-year porn addiction. I'm like, sorry.
Mm.
God can, but it's usually a longer process than that.
Yeah. Troy, I love it. We're bouncing around everywhere. This is great. I'm enjoying
It's
it.
fun,
I love
right?
it. My brain goes a million miles an hour. So I'm like, boom, boom, boom. We're just going to go over here. Let's talk about what you are also passionate, which is the betrayed spouse and understanding the trauma that's experienced. I think a lot of, and I actually want to go a little deeper than just the surface level. I think
Yeah.
we've gotten better, I would say, as a
Yes.
culture over the past 10 years at understanding this is going to greatly impact my wife. And at least our
Yes.
audience, if they've listened to, if this is our first podcast, they might not be, but if they had heard any of our other podcasts, like, okay, I get it. Betrayal trauma is a real thing. But I want to talk about how can a guy
Mm,
help his wife heal if he understands
mm,
she's been affected, and and then we'll talk about maybe a little bit about what the wife can do to start healing from the trauma. But first, let's go to the husband.
yeah.
What can the husband do to start helping his wife heal from the trauma that he created through betrayal?
Well, he can own his issues.
Mm.
He cannot deny, he cannot minimize, and he needs to stay humble, right? I mean, if he's like, what can I do to help her? I got to own my stuff. I got to not defend. I got to not minimize, and I got to stay humble, right? And I need my guys to help me do that, right? But that's the first thing. And then another thing he can do is he can do everything he possibly can to learn about the impact that had upon her. He could be reading an article on this issue. He could listen to some interviews. He can go in and talk to guys in his group and be like, hey, help me understand. He can also ask her, but sometimes that's not the first thing you do. But he needs to be able to give her ears to hear, listen to her, and practice figuring out what she's experienced. I mean, that's part of it.
To go,
Um,
can I go a little further than that?
yeah,
So
go further, go further.
let's say the example is somebody who's working on their sobriety first. They know that's a problem. They've owned that, and so now they're 6 months, a year sober. And I think sometimes
Mm,
what happens is there is this not humble approach. It's like, I've
yes.
been sober a year. Like, come on, we need to get back to normalcy or some set of that. His desires for his relationship, things like that. My question would be, how
Mm,
does he stay so humble? Because yes, he's done a great job working on his addiction and maybe behavior.
yeah.
My question was, what does that staying humble look like in the context of a relationship?
Well, I think a couple things. I think he needs to understand the commands that God has given him is that his love for his wife is sacrificial and not conditional.
Mm.
So there's no end in that. He doesn't get the freedom to go, oh, I've been doing this a year, therefore I can kind of slack off or demand something from you. That's one piece of it. The second piece of it is this goes into a little bit of the treatment for the betrayed spouse, because oftentimes they can get stuck and they need good support around them. He's in recovery, she's in healing, and we want to make sure that she has all the support she needs to kind of heal and move in that direction. But if there is a stuckness there, then that can go on a year, 3 years, 5 years, even longer. Now, I'm never one to kind of push a spouse to say you need to fix this quickly, by no means. But we need to make sure that they're having the support they need to heal, to not be defined by what's happened, and to work through that grief process, that lament experience. They need to work through that. And sometimes I see that stuckness will create that experience where the guy's like, oh, it's been a year, it's been 2 years. But I always come back to him to be like, you really don't have an option, do you?
Yeah. So what I hear you saying on the guy's part is so powerful, Troy, that it is sacrificial, not
Yeah,
conditional. I think a lot of
not
guys get
conditional.
stuck in their
Oh,
humility because they are like, wow, we should be farther along. I've done this. She hasn't done this. I've done this. I've implemented all these things. And so you're right. There elevates this level of almost like, I guess the opposite of humility is pride, but like,
yeah.
it's not this humble approach. It's not the sacrificial approach. And I think that's where a
Mhm.
guy could easily get stuck in his own heart recovery, right? His own change. Where do you think the betrayed
Yeah.
spouse gets stuck? Or push back, add more to that, please.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think for um, the guy, remember, he's an addict
Okay.
or a recovering addict. And one of the things about addiction is immediate gratification or instant gratification.
Mm.
So even though he still falls into that, like, I want this to be fixed yesterday, and we have to guard against that. But for the betrayed spouse, I mean, every betrayed spouse is has this a lot of the similarities, but they're unique. I can think of spouses who've had multiple betrayals before they've been betrayed by their partner, and that just brings a lot of wrinkles into it. But we need to help them understand that there is freedom and healing for her as well. We want to keep bringing home that idea of what does freedom and healing look like for her. And so that's why she needs to have really good support around her and know that she's not defined by this. She is severely impacted by it, but she's not defined by it. And then get that process going to heal and have no shame about it. If it takes 6 months or 6 years, that's okay, right? Because I was saying this to somebody, I think maybe it was a client this afternoon or this morning. Um, Betrayal is so deep, so deep that, I mean, even God spoke about that. My people are an adulterous generation. And he was grieved by the fact that his people, and yet he was continually gracious, calling them back to himself, right? So if God uses that example, betrayal, as one of the most heinous, deepest cutting sins, who are we to think that a spouse should just get over this in
Not at all.
6 months or
Absolutely. It's
yeah.
not a
So
timeline. I love what you said. It's not about a timeline. It's not about being impatient, but it's about
no,
pressing into healing. And I
yes,
think that that is, it's definitely different than the victim mindset
mm,
or even just the fear. I think
yes,
I don't think that betrayed wives often choose the victim mindset. I think they fall into
no,
for a lack of hope and a
mm,
lack of healing
yeah,
and a lack of wow God the under you what you said was so good, Troy, and I have to repeat it because it was so good. You don't have to be defined by this. It's going to
no,
greatly impact you. It's going to severely affect the way you think, the way you process everything in your life, but it doesn't have to define you. And I just hope every betrayed spouse hears that in
yeah.
this episode
And
because
remember what we're asking them. Have you thought about what we're asking the betrayed spouse to do?
please.
The very person that you committed your life to, made a covenant vow with, has obliterated you and betrayed you. And now we want you to get over that and trust them again. When
Mm.
you just say that out loud,
Oh man.
it feels impossible. It's not, but it also shows the gravity, the depth of it. And when he hears that out loud, he's like, yeah, I need to really keep that in my purview, in my mind, day in and day out.
Oh,
But we really want to strongly encourage her to heal. I mean, that's the whole idea. And
yeah.
she
Yeah.
deserves it.
Yeah, she
Yeah, she
does.
does.
Well, I want to ask you two last questions after you
Yeah.
shared just so much wisdom. One is you've been in this field for over 20 plus years, and I'm sure you've seen trends
Mm,
and maybe patterns
mm,
in the recovery space. And I would kind of love to hear, like,
mm.
what are you seeing right now, especially with, I mean, pornography looks so different as we know 20 years
Oh
ago.
yeah.
It looked different 10 years ago, and now it looks different 5 years ago, even to now with AI and everything. I mean, what
Yeah.
are you kind of seeing are the new patterns in your office?
So I'm going to be bold enough to say that I'm not seeing any new underlying patterns.
Yeah.
Mm,
I'm seeing new manifestations
Mm.
of
mm,
how it shows up, right? How it shows up. So, whether it's the magazine or whether it's the AI or whether it's the pictures here, it's just showing up in different ways. And I don't think there's anything new under the sun. I don't know if you guys came to Sills when it was in San Antonio.
yep.
Yeah.
Did you do San Antonio? I think that's where we met.
Yep.
Yep.
Um, and the priest who talked about sexual immorality in the first century church,
Wow.
and wrote a book on that. There's nothing new under the sun. It just kind of takes on all kinds of different manifestations. So, and then there's a lot of shame that's around certain things now that maybe not before, more shame. So I don't see anything new going on in the heart of man. I just see the different manifestations. So I'm always wanting to kind of peel through,
Yeah.
okay, let's learn about what you're doing and how you're doing it so that I can get in and help you understand the underlying issue. There's a whole couple techniques to understand. I don't think that a guy, particularly a guy, um, he looks at the same kind of pornography all the time. Why? Why does
Mm.
he go to the same kind of stuff all the time? Because there's a heart issue underneath, something he's trying to get satisfied in that. And so I just use the way they act out to get to the core.
So good.
So good.
So good.
I love
Yeah.
that.
Do you, sorry, it was two
And
questions.
you're
Right
good.
now, three, because I want to ask a question on that question, the question at
Take
the
your
beginning.
time. I'm done for the day.
Do you think that there's maybe more, how do I word this? If the problem's always been there,
Mm.
right? And the
Mm,
heart issues have always been there, do you think that more people now are admitting their brokenness? Or
mm.
do you think that there is, because from what we've heard from people is, oh, you know, women are now cheating or women are now more addicted. Like the stats have definitely changed even for
Oh yeah.
women. So
Yeah.
would you say that there's more people that are struggling, which is more of a reason to continue doing the work that you're doing? Or do you think it's more so, I think we've all been struggling. I think it's more
Oh, we're
so
just now talking about it.
just now talking about it. Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah, I think you're getting to a bigger philosophical worldview issue. I mean, someone made the statement the other day is that we had social media to connect everybody, but we become more disconnected in the
Mm.
end, right? And so our culture is shrinking and more isolating. And so when you do that, you don't have the community that you typically need in order to survive and thrive, right? So now I'm inwardly focused, I'm at home, I have more opportunity, more access, then you're just going to breed this
Wow.
usage stuff more. And so I think it's a bigger issue than that. And so that's why we want to encourage people get in community, be outside of your life, stay away from certain things, and you'll be healthier. But I think our culture has just gotten so inwardly
Yeah.
focused. I think it was a research someone did years ago, like they talked about going to some third world country or even a second world country and talking about pornography and adultery and marriages breaking up, and the people were like, what are you talking about? We don't do that here."
Wow.
Because we're so busy doing life, right? But
Yeah.
in our culture, we're so busy
Wow.
navel gazing and
Yeah.
focusing on ourselves.
Wow.
So I think that that question you have is kind of bigger and it's a cultural thing, but that doesn't mean that we can't help, and particularly our guys, say we got to break the mold.
Yeah.
Mm.
Remember what Jesus said is that you will look different
Yeah.
than the culture around you. You will, and you ought to. And so having more people, sometimes people say, my neighbor said to me one time, "You have a lot of cars at your house." Yeah, because we have a lot of people over all the time. So we can do life together,
Love it.
Yeah.
right? And it's so important. But if you watch your neighbors for the next month, how many cars, how many people, how many parties, how many connections are they having?
Yeah. So true.
Very low, very
Good
low.
point. That's a
So
good point.
good. Well, I'd
Oh.
love to end with this question. What are you
Oh,
passionate about right now?
Mm.
um, so you probably have seen it in my conversation. One of the missions of my redeeminglife.net is the concept of integration, integrating our faith into the work we do as the primary foundation.
Mm.
And so I want to do that well in all of the things I do, whether it's with my clients, whether it's speaking, whether it's writing or whatever I'm doing. I'm trying to help people understand the integration because we cannot leave our distinctive faith. We cannot. If we do, what are we hoping in?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
What hope do I have to give a client? Oh, here's some neuroscience. Oh, here's some statistics. Here's some groups. All good. But if you're not doing that with God, and understanding what His heart for
Yeah.
you is, it's for naught.
Yep.
Right? And I don't want to lead astray. So integration is a passion of mine.
I love that, Troy. I think that summarizes this episode, your heart, what you do so well. It's
Mhm.
integrating Jesus into all of it, the ultimate healer, the ultimate restorer, the one who comes into the recesses of our heart
Yeah.
and gives us new life, right? Takes out the heart of stone and gives us the heart of flesh.
Yep.
And I
And my plea to your audience is you can't integrate what you don't know.
mm,
Know your word. Know the word because it will not return void. It will show up in your office every day. My Bible app that has the verse of the day, I can't tell you how many times I quote that verse of the day to my clients when they come in
wow.
because it's applicable.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
God is bigger. God knows more than we do.
And for those that are listening that maybe
There
don't
you
know Jesus, I just hope you can picture that moment in the garden where Jesus did not need to say, "Where are you?" And maybe he's just asking you right now, "Where are you?" And it's your choice whether you keep hiding yourself with the fig leaves, staying behind the tree, hiding in the bushes, or if you say, "Here I am, Lord. I've been hiding, but I can't keep hiding. I can't keep doing this. This isn't working. It's hurting me. It's hurting my family,
Yeah.
hurting those around me. And I want healing." And that's for both the spouse who's struggling with the addiction and the spouse who's struggling with the trauma. That
Yeah.
it's so easy for any person to hide in our pain, to hide in our shame, instead of just saying, "Jesus, I'm right here and I need you." Because he shows up with so much grace, so much love, and he'll be with you every step of the way.
Yeah. Amen.
Troy, thanks for
Always.
being with us today. We are so grateful for you on this episode. Thanks for taking the time.
Hey, glad to be here.